Car manufacturers don't want you to know that their engineering departments have produced mechanical disasters that destroyed entire market segments. What if I told you that one engine was so catastrophically flawed that it triggered the largest automotive lawsuit in history? That's not just poor reliability, one engine failure that cost GM hundreds of millions and killed American diesel trust for 3 decades. Imagine being one of 310,000 customers who bought what seemed like innovative fuel-saving technology, only to discover you'd purchased a guaranteed financial nightmare. In this video, I'm counting down the worst engines ever built that turned car ownership into expensive torture. And trust me, number 1 might shock you. It's so fundamentally broken that it forced an entire company to abandon a proven technology. Stick with me to the end, because this isn't just automotive history. It's your financial survival guide to avoid the mechanical disasters that destroyed countless owners' bank accounts. Number 7. Ford 4.2-liter Essex V6, 1997 to 2008. Starting our countdown at number 7, the Ford 4.2-liter Essex V6 was designed as a budget-friendly option for light trucks and vans, but it delivered a host of expensive problems instead. This engine became notorious among Ford truck owners for its consistent and predictable failures that could bankrupt unsuspecting owners who thought they were getting reliable, affordable transportation. The Essex V6 was plagued by intake manifold gasket failures that would develop relatively early in the engine's life, often before 100,000 miles. When these gaskets failed, they caused coolant leaks that could lead to overheating and potential engine damage. The manifold gasket failure wasn't just an inconvenience, it was often the first domino in a series of expensive repairs that could total thousands of dollars. The timing cover represented another major failure point, prone to cracking and causing significant oil leaks. These weren't minor seepage issues that you could ignore. These were substantial leaks that could leave large puddles under your vehicle and potentially starve the engine of lubrication if not addressed immediately. The timing cover cracks often occurred without warning, leaving owners stranded with suddenly non-functional vehicles. Perhaps most seriously, the Essex V6 suffered from crankshaft problems that could lead to complete engine failure. When the crankshaft developed issues, you weren't looking at a repair. You were facing a complete engine replacement or rebuild that often cost more than the vehicle was worth. The crankshaft problems typically manifested as severe knocking sounds, vibrations, and eventual complete engine seizure. What made the Essex V6 particularly frustrating for owners was the frequency and predictability of these problems. This wasn't a case of isolated incidents or poor maintenance causing occasional failures. These were systematic design flaws that affected the majority of engines as they accumulated mileage. Many owners reported that they began setting aside money for engine repairs as soon as they bought a vehicle with the Essex V6, knowing that expensive problems were inevitable rather than possible. Number 6. Subaru 2.5-liter EJ25, 1996 to 2011. At number 6, the Subaru 2.5-liter EJ25 boxer engine has achieved legendary status among automotive enthusiasts, but not for the reasons Subaru would prefer. This engine had a notorious Achilles heel that turned many Subaru owners into part-time mechanics just to keep their vehicles running, and created an entire cottage industry of independent repair shops specializing in head gasket replacements. The EJ25's primary weakness was its head gaskets, which would fail with alarming regularity and devastating predictability. These weren't failures that occurred after 200,000 miles of hard use or poor maintenance. Many engines experienced head gasket problems before reaching 100,000 miles. The head gasket failures typically manifested as internal coolant and oil leaks that could cause overheating, oil contamination, and eventually complete engine failure if not addressed promptly. The external symptoms of head gasket failure were often subtle at first, making diagnosis challenging for owners who weren't familiar with the warning signs. White exhaust smoke, especially on cold startups, was often the first indicator. Coolant levels would mysteriously drop without visible external leaks, and the oil would gradually take on a milky appearance as coolant mixed with engine oil. What made this problem particularly expensive was that head gasket replacement on a boxer engine requires significant disassembly due to the horizontally opposed design. The engine layout that gives Subaru vehicles their low center of gravity and excellent handling characteristics also makes the engine extremely labor-intensive to repair. Mechanics had to remove the engine from the vehicle or lift the body off the engine to access the head gaskets properly. A head gasket job on an EJ25 could easily cost $3,000 to $4,000, often more than the vehicle's value on older models. This created a devastating situation where owners faced repair bills that exceeded their car's worth, forcing them to either abandon their vehicles or invest more money than the car could ever return. The frequency of this problem was so well known in the automotive community that many Subaru owners would preemptively budget for head gasket replacement. This created an unusual situation where a major engine repair was considered routine maintenance rather than an unexpected failure. Online forums were filled with discussions about timing the repair, finding the best shops, and whether to sell before the inevitable failure occurred. Many owners learned to live with minor symptoms of head gasket failure, constantly monitoring coolant levels and watching for signs of oil contamination. This turned what should be reliable transportation into a source of constant anxiety and maintenance vigilance, where every cold startup and coolant level check created stress about expensive repairs. Number 5. Mazda 1.3-liter rotary 13B Renaissance. The Mazda 1.3-liter rotary engine at number 5 represents one of the most unique and simultaneously problematic engines ever produced. While the rotary design is compact and capable of achieving incredibly high RPMs, its reliability issues earned it a reputation as more of a mechanical curiosity than practical transportation, creating a devoted but constantly frustrated fanbase. The rotary engine's fundamental design required it to consume oil as part of its normal operation. This wasn't a design flaw, it was completely intentional. The engine needed oil injection to lubricate the apex seals, which are critical components that seal the combustion chambers in the triangular rotor housing. However, this design requirement created inherent reliability problems that proved impossible to overcome with the technology available at the time. The apex seals were the rotary engine's critical weakness and the source of most ownership nightmares. These seals would wear out prematurely, often failing before the engine reached 60,000 miles, sometimes as early as 40,000 miles with hard driving. When apex seals failed, the engine would lose compression in one or more chambers, causing it to run roughly, lose power dramatically, and eventually stop running altogether. Replacing apex seals wasn't a simple repair. It required a complete engine rebuild that involved disassembling the entire rotary assembly. This rebuild typically cost $4,000 to $6,000, and that was assuming the engine housings weren't damaged beyond repair. If the housings were scored or cracked, you were looking at even higher costs or complete engine replacement. The oil consumption requirement also created practical problems that many owners weren't prepared for. The engine needed specific oil types and required constant monitoring of oil levels because running low on oil would accelerate apex seal wear dramatically. Using the wrong oil or allowing oil levels to drop could destroy the engine in a matter of miles rather than thousands of miles. The rotary's sensitivity to maintenance created a situation where only the most dedicated enthusiasts could successfully own these vehicles long-term. Many RX-8 owners found themselves facing engine rebuilds or replacements while still making car payments, creating financial stress that far exceeded the purchase price. This created a vicious cycle in the used car market. The threat of expensive engine work meant that used rotary-powered vehicles had poor resale values, which attracted buyers looking for affordable sports cars. However, these budget-conscious buyers were often the least prepared to handle the expensive maintenance requirements, leading to even more engine failures and further damaging the rotary's reputation. The rotary engine's problems were so severe and so widespread that Mazda eventually discontinued the technology entirely after the 2012 model year, ending production of the RX-8 and effectively abandoning decades of rotary engine development and engineering investment. Number 4. Cadillac V8-6-4, 1981. At number 4, the Cadillac V8-6-4 represents a classic example of innovative thinking destroyed by poor execution. This engine was GM's early attempt at cylinder deactivation technology, designed to save fuel by shutting off cylinders when full power wasn't needed. The concept was sound, but the execution was a disaster. The V8-6-4's problems stem from the primitive electronics available in 1981. The computer systems of the era simply weren't sophisticated enough to manage the complex process of smoothly transitioning between different cylinder configurations. The result was an engine that delivered horrific drivability and constant hesitation. Owners reported jerky transitions as the engine switched between 8, 6, and 4-cylinder operation. The computer system couldn't smoothly manage these transitions, creating a driving experience that felt like the car was constantly fighting itself. The engine would surge, hesitate, and deliver unpredictable power output that made normal driving a frustrating experience. The primitive engine management system also triggered frequent misfires and a constant stream of check engine lights. The electronics couldn't properly coordinate fuel delivery and ignition timing during cylinder transitions, leading to rough running and poor fuel economy, the exact opposite of what the system was designed to achieve. The reliability problems were so severe that many dealers recommended disabling the cylinder deactivation system entirely, effectively turning the V8-6-4 into a standard V8. This defeated the entire purpose of the technology and left owners with an unnecessarily complex engine that delivered none of its promised benefits. The failure of the V8-6-4 set back cylinder deactivation technology by decades. It wasn't until computer systems became much more sophisticated in the 2000s that manufacturers were able to successfully implement variable displacement technology. Number 3, GM 2.4-liter Ecotech, 2010 to 2017. At number 3, the GM 2.4-liter Ecotech engine demonstrates how a seemingly minor design flaw can cascade into catastrophic failure. This engine was designed to be a dependable and efficient power plant for popular vehicles like the Chevrolet Equinox and GMC Terrain, but it quickly became notorious for burning oil like a two-stroke dirt bike. The Ecotech's oil consumption problem was a direct result of design choices made to enhance fuel efficiency. GM used lightweight pistons with thinner, lower-tension piston rings that were less effective at preventing oil from entering the combustion chamber. This allowed oil to burn off during normal operation, requiring owners to constantly monitor and top off their oil levels. The problem was made worse by a poorly designed positive crankcase ventilation system that pulled oil vapors directly into the intake manifold and combustion chamber, where they would burn off. Some engines were consuming a full quart of oil every 1,000 miles, turning routine driving into constant maintenance vigilance. But the oil consumption was just the beginning of the Ecotech's problems. The timing chain system relied on proper oil pressure for tensioning, and with the engine constantly consuming oil, low oil levels could lead to critically low oil pressure. This lack of proper tension caused premature wear and failure of the timing system. When the timing chain failed, it could become loose, skip teeth, or break entirely, resulting in catastrophic engine damage. The timing chain failure often required complete engine replacement, turning a fuel-efficient economy car into an expensive financial disaster. The widespread nature of these problems led to multiple class action lawsuits against General Motors. GM initially offered limited coverage for piston assembly replacements, but consumer pressure forced them to expand the settlement to cover complete engine replacements when timing chain damage occurred. Let me pause here to mention something important. If you're finding this analysis of automotive engineering failures valuable, consider subscribing to stay updated on automotive history and reliability information like this. Understanding these patterns can save you from making expensive mistakes when shopping for used vehicles. Number 2, Ford 5.4-liter 3-valve Triton V8, 2004 to 2014. At number 2, the Ford 5.4-liter 3-valve Triton V8 earned its place in automotive infamy by turning routine maintenance into expensive nightmares. This engine was ubiquitous in Ford's popular F-Series trucks, making its problems a source of misery for millions of truck owners. The Triton's troubles can be described as a two-part saga of spark plug disasters. Early two-valve models from 1997 to 2003 suffered from a fundamental design flaw, where the spark plugs had too few threads to withstand combustion pressure. This caused plugs to literally explode out of cylinder heads, often damaging the threads and requiring expensive cylinder head repairs. Ford attempted to fix this problem in 2004 by adding more threads to the spark plugs, but this created an even worse nightmare. The new design used two-piece spark plugs that would become fused in place due to carbon buildup. When mechanics attempted to remove these plugs during routine maintenance, they would frequently break off, leaving the threaded portion stuck inside the cylinder head. What should have been a simple $200 spark plug replacement could quickly escalate into a multi-day repair costing over $1,000. Many shops began charging additional hourly fees for each broken plug, and some plugs were so severely stuck that they required specialized extraction tools or even cylinder head removal. This created a culture of anxiety among Triton owners, where routine maintenance became a dreaded event. Many owners would delay spark plug changes as long as possible, knowing that each service visit could result in a massive repair bill. The Triton's problems extended far beyond spark plugs. The engine was also notorious for cam phaser and timing chain issues. Ford was among the first manufacturers to implement variable valve timing, but the early systems were problematic. Weak locking pins in the cam phasers would fail, causing a distinct rattling sound on startup until oil pressure built up. The timing chain itself was prone to stretching, which could lead to broken timing chain guides and metal shavings circulating in the engine oil. These timing issues often resulted from poor oil pressure or neglected maintenance, but the root cause was the inherent vulnerability of the design. Many Triton owners eventually gave up on repairing their original engines and opted for complete engine replacements with remanufactured units that had updated components to eliminate the original problems. This represents a complete breakdown in the manufacturer-consumer relationship, where the original product was deemed unfixable and replacement became the only viable solution. Number 1. Oldsmobile 350 Diesel V8, 1978 to 1985. Taking the top spot as the worst engine of all time, the Oldsmobile 350 Diesel V8 stands as a monument to engineering hubris and corporate short-sightedness. This engine didn't just fail, it single-handedly destroyed American consumer trust in passenger diesel technology for over 30 years. Introduced in 1978 as GM's response to the fuel crisis and new CAFE standards, the Oldsmobile Diesel was a catastrophic miscalculation. Rather than designing a purpose-built diesel engine from the ground up, GM opted for a cost-cutting shortcut, a hasty conversion of an existing gasoline V8. Internal warnings were reportedly ignored, with one Oldsmobile engineer who advised against releasing the unfinished engine being forced into early retirement. GM proceeded anyway, and in 1981 alone, they inflicted this mechanical nightmare on nearly 310,000 customers, capturing 60% of the US passenger diesel market. The engine's fundamental flaws were rooted in its gasoline engine heritage. Diesel engines operate at compression ratios 3 times higher than gasoline engines, but the Oldsmobile Diesel retained the same head bolt design as the gasoline V8. This was woefully insufficient for the immense combustion pressures, leading to widespread head bolt failures, blown head gaskets, and cracked cylinder heads. Despite several redesigns, the core issue of inadequate head bolts for proper clamping force was never fully resolved. The engine simply couldn't handle the pressures it was designed to withstand. GM's cost-cutting made the problems worse. They omitted a crucial water separator to save money, and with poor diesel fuel quality at the time, water contamination led to corroded injector pumps. Desperate owners tried adding alcohol to their fuel to remove water, but this dissolved fuel pump seals and created even more problems. To add insult to injury, the diesel was often paired with GM's equally problematic THM 200 automatic transmission, which had its own high failure rate. Owners were dealing with simultaneous engine and transmission failures that could cost more than the vehicle's entire value. The engine's performance was as disappointing as its reliability. It produced only 120 horsepower, later reduced to 105 horsepower, making it both unreliable and anemic. Owners got the worst of both worlds: poor performance and catastrophic reliability problems. The aftermath was severe and far-reaching. The widespread failures led to a Federal Trade Commission complaint and one of the largest automotive class action lawsuits in history. GM was forced to pay up to 80% of the cost for new engines, and many cars had their diesels replaced with conventional gasoline engines. Now that you've seen how engineering disasters can destroy your wallet, you need to know which engines actually deliver bulletproof reliability. Check out my video on 13 old truck engines that were built to last forever. These power plants prove that some manufacturers got it absolutely right.